In September 1991, two German hikers discovered what they thought was the body of a recent climbing accident victim high in the Austrian Alps. What they had actually found was Ötzi the Iceman, a 5,300-year-old mummy whose perfectly preserved remains would unlock one of archaeology's most chilling murder mysteries. For over 3 decades, scientists believed they understood how this Copper Age hunter met his end. A simple story of conflict that ended with an arrow to the back. But revolutionary. New forensic techniques and cutting-edge medical analysis have revealed the horrifying truth about Ötzi's final hours. A story of violence so brutal and systematic that it has completely rewritten our understanding of prehistoric warfare and the savage realities of life in ancient Europe. The original investigation, conducted in the 1990s using the forensic technology available at the time, painted a relatively straightforward picture of Ötzi's demise. Researchers found a flint arrowhead lodged deep in his left shoulder, just beneath the shoulder blade, and concluded that he had died from this single wound. The narrative seemed clear. Ötzi had been involved in some kind of conflict, perhaps a territorial dispute or robbery attempt, and had been killed by an enemy archer who shot him from behind as he fled. It was a violent end, certainly, but not uncommon for the dangerous world of the Copper Age. This interpretation dominated scientific literature and popular media for decades, presenting Ötzi's death as a quick, if unfortunate, conclusion to what had likely been a brief encounter with hostile neighbors. But cracks began to appear in this neat narrative as forensic technology advanced and researchers gained access to more sophisticated analytical tools. In 2007, high-resolution CT scans revealed that the arrow wound was actually far more complex than initially understood. The projectile hadn't simply pierced Ötzi's back and killed him quickly. Instead, it had followed a devastating trajectory through his body, severing major blood vessels and causing massive internal trauma that would have taken time to prove fatal. More disturbing still, evidence began to emerge, suggesting that the arrow wound might not have been the cause of death at all, but merely one element in a far more horrific sequence of events. The breakthrough came when researchers at the Institute for Mummies and the Iceman in Bolzano, Italy, employed revolutionary forensic techniques never before used on ancient human remains. Using micro-CT scanning combined with 3D modeling and advanced chemical analysis, they were able to reconstruct Ötzi's final hours with unprecedented detail and accuracy. What they discovered was a story of violence so systematic and prolonged that it challenges our fundamental assumptions about conflict and warfare in prehistoric Europe. The new analysis revealed that Ötzi's death was not the result of a single attack, but rather a coordinated assault, involving multiple attackers using different weapons over an extended period of time. The evidence painted a terrifying picture of a man who was hunted, captured, tortured, and ultimately executed in what appears to have been a ritualized killing that combined elements of warfare, punishment, and possibly religious sacrifice. The first shocking revelation came from analysis of Ötzi's hands and defensive wounds. Advanced imaging revealed multiple deep cuts on his palms, fingers, and forearms that had been inflicted while he was still alive and fighting for survival. These weren't accidental injuries from handling tools or falling on rocks. They were defensive wounds consistent with someone desperately trying to ward off blade attacks from multiple directions. The pattern and severity of these cuts indicated that Ötzi had been engaged in hand-to-hand combat for a significant period, fighting against overwhelming odds as his attackers slowly overwhelmed him. But here's where the discoveries become truly horrifying. Chemical analysis of tissue samples from around these wounds revealed something unprecedented: traces of a paralytic plant toxin that had been deliberately applied to the attackers' weapons. Ötzi's killers had poisoned their blades with a sophisticated neurotoxin derived from local alpine plants, causing progressive paralysis that would have gradually rendered him helpless while keeping him conscious and aware of his fate. This wasn't just murder. It was a calculated and methodical process designed to incapacitate the victim while prolonging his suffering. The timeline of Ötzi's final ordeal, reconstructed through forensic analysis of his injuries and tissue damage, reveals a nightmarish sequence of events that unfolded over several hours. The initial attack likely began in the late afternoon, based on analysis of his stomach contents and the position in which his body was found. Multiple attackers, possibly 5 or 6 individuals based on the variety of weapon types and attack angles, surrounded and overwhelmed him in what appears to have been a carefully planned ambush. The first phase of the attack involved disabling Ötzi through the poisoned blade wounds to his hands and arms. As the neurotoxin took effect, he would have experienced progressive loss of motor control while remaining fully conscious and aware. During this vulnerable state, his attackers subjected him to what can only be described as systematic torture. New forensic evidence reveals multiple blunt force trauma injuries to his ribs, abdomen and legs that were inflicted while he was incapacitated but still alive. The most disturbing discovery was evidence of what researchers now believe was a ritualized humiliation phase of the killing. Microscopic analysis revealed that Ötzi's clothing had been methodically damaged and his personal possessions scattered in specific patterns around his body. His copper axe, a symbol of status and wealth in Copper Age society, had been deliberately damaged and left beside him in what appears to have been a symbolic gesture of dominance and conquest. The arrow wound, originally thought to be the cause of death, was actually inflicted during the final phase of this prolonged ordeal. Forensic reconstruction shows that Ötzi was likely forced to his knees with his back to his primary attacker when the fatal arrow was shot from close range. The projectile was aimed with surgical precision to cause maximum internal damage while avoiding an immediately fatal wound, suggesting that his killer possessed detailed knowledge of human anatomy and intended to prolong Ötzi's suffering even further. But the most chilling aspect of this new evidence is what it reveals about the nature of his death wound itself. Advanced tissue analysis shows that Ötzi lived for approximately 30 to 45 minutes after being shot with the arrow, during which time he would have been conscious but paralyzed, slowly bleeding to death while his attackers watched. The positioning of his body and the distribution of blood evidence suggests that his killers remained at the scene throughout this final phase, possibly engaging in additional ritualistic activities while he died. The forensic evidence also reveals that this wasn't a random act of violence or simple robbery. Ötzi's valuable possessions, including his copper axe and intricately crafted bow, were left at the scene rather than taken as plunder. His clothing, while damaged, was carefully arranged in patterns that suggest symbolic or religious significance. Most tellingly, analysis of the arrowhead reveals that it was crafted specifically for this killing, made from a rare type of flint not found in the immediate area, and shaped using techniques that required considerable skill and preparation time. This evidence points to what researchers now believe was a ritualized execution carried out for reasons that went far beyond simple conflict or territorial disputes. The systematic nature of the violence, the use of poison, the prolonged timeline, and the symbolic elements all suggest that Ötzi's killing was connected to religious practices, tribal justice, or possibly accusations of witchcraft or social transgressions that warranted the most extreme form of punishment available to Copper Age society. The implications of these discoveries extend far beyond just one ancient murder case. They reveal that prehistoric European societies possessed far more sophisticated concepts of justice, punishment, and ritualized violence than previously understood. The coordination required to plan and execute such an elaborate killing, the knowledge of toxicology needed to create effective paralytic poisons, and the anatomical understanding demonstrated in the precise placement of wounds, all indicate levels of social organization and technical knowledge that challenge our assumptions about Copper Age capabilities. The new evidence also suggests that violence in prehistoric Europe was far more systematic and psychologically sophisticated than the simple conflicts over resources that we typically associate with ancient societies. Ötzi's killers weren't primitive savages acting on basic instincts. They were members of a complex society with detailed codes of justice, elaborate punishment rituals, and the technical knowledge to carry out executions with terrifying precision and cruelty. The story of Ötzi's death forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature and the capacity for organized cruelty that has existed throughout our species' history. His perfectly preserved remains provide a window into a world where justice was personal, punishment was public, and death could be transformed into an elaborate performance designed to send messages about power, control, and the consequences of transgression. The Iceman's final hours reveal that our ancestors were capable of both remarkable technological achievements and horrifying acts of calculated violence. As we continue to analyze his remains, using ever more advanced techniques, we may yet uncover additional details about this ancient murder that will further challenge our understanding of prehistoric society and human behavior. Thanks for watching. If you found this forensic reconstruction as disturbing and fascinating as we did, consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more archaeological discoveries that continue to reveal the complex and often brutal realities of ancient life. Let us know in the comments what you think about the possibility that prehistoric justice was far more sophisticated and cruel than we previously imagined. What other ancient mysteries might advanced forensic techniques help solve? Until next time, keep questioning everything we think we know about our ancestors and the violent world they inhabited.